excited to have Officer Todd here with us today to talk about communications in the field of law enforcement. So, here at Connect to Engage, I am part of a team of speech and language communication experts. And we talk about how communication is absolutely critical, no matter what field you're in. And so each month we invite a different group of people to talk to and chat with, and then we can kind of compare notes. And wow, we are all very similar when it comes to communication. Communication is super important. So with that, I'm excited to welcome special guest Officer Todd from the law enforcement world. How's it going, Todd?
I'm doing well. Good evening. How are you doing?
We're good. I'm good. I'm excited to hear about your journey and in your profession, and just take a deeper dive into effective communication and why it's essential. So
Okay.
tell me about your role in law enforcement and why you got into it.
Okay. Well, my dad was a police officer for 35 years, and so growing up in a household with him going to and from work as a police officer, I kind of got into that a little bit. It was intriguing to me, and so I went to school for it, studied criminal justice, and I actually got to work with my dad before he retired, which
Wow.
was fun. And that was 23 years ago.
Hmm.
But law enforcement is just kind of a family job. Like on the East Coast, it's family's on the job. My
Hmm.
sister was a police officer, her husband was a police officer, his brothers were police officers, my dad,
Wow.
myself. So it's kind of the family career, if you will.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been a interesting and fun journey. It's like I said, it's been ups and downs for 23 years. A lot of things have changed since 2001 to 2024.
Oh, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. And what is your current role in what you're doing now?
So currently, I am a motor traffic officer in the city that I work in, and my sole purpose and my job is to do traffic enforcement, which includes writing people tickets, which people don't like, but that's part of trying to lower the collision rate in the city that I work in. And the more you do enforcement, it brings down hopefully the collision ratios for the city. We also take major collisions, fatalities,
Mm.
any major collision in the city. That's what I'm responsible for. But we also do other things as well. We parking complaints. There's any kind of a traffic complaint that a citizen may have in the city. If an abandoned vehicle or there's a issue with a speeding in a certain area of the city, that falls on our division, and we go out there and we try to handle that situation as best we can.
You're the guy or the officer where you pull up behind me and I'm on the freeway and my heart starts to beat really fast and I like am extra special careful, like oh god, and then you pass and then okay, thank you.
Yes, typically that's me. I'm on a motorcycle. The red lights, the blue lights are blinking. I got the white helmet, so yeah, that would be me. But most of my
Or
contacts
oh,
are
go ahead.
positive. No, most of
No,
my
no.
contacts. I mean, I when I talk to people, I always break it down why I stopped them, and I would say 85% of the time they know why they got stopped.
Sure.
And usually at the end of our conversation in the traffic stop, they say thank you, I won't do it again, and we move on. There's a few that have other um, ways of communicating with me, but typically that's kind of how my day goes usually.
We're gonna get into that. The other piece of that I think is when I am on the freeway and someone just like flies past me and I go, where are the cops? I
And we're
there
never
has
there.
that's well, it
Yeah.
is that's happened a couple of times where a car has flown past me and then there's an officer like right on there and I'm like right on their tail and I'm like that's cool, that part's me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And then, on that too, it's, sometimes there's never an officer when you want one, right? It's always, yeah, where's an officer? It's never here trying to do the speeding enforcement. We're there. It's just we're not there at that moment in time. Believe me, we're out and about today. We had five of us out there doing enforcement today. So we're all over the city. We just may not be in that particular area, but we are there. Yeah.
you're appreciated because nobody likes to see the people that are driving recklessly and
Mm-hmm.
the texting is bad and all of that. So, okay, let's talk about communication. What would you say is what is the role of effective communication within that day-to-day operation of your work?
the main thing is, I got to communicate with dispatch. I mean, dispatch will send me a call, or they'll dispatch me to a call, if you will, to whatever we're going to, either a traffic collision or it could be anything, right? But you have to have effective communication with dispatch to try to get that information from the caller
Mm-hmm.
to the dispatcher to me. And sometimes there can be a disconnect because the caller may be saying one thing, the dispatcher says something else, and then it relates to me. It's almost like we're a
Mm.
third party. If I'm in a patrol car, we do have a MDT computer, and we can see what the person calling is telling dispatch. So they'll type it in, and it comes in my computer, and
Oh,
I can read what the caller is stating. But sometimes, it's hard for
wow.
dispatch because the person calling in is in a crisis, or they're having there's
Hmm.
someone big in their house or whatever the case may be. And so they're in a state of mind where they just need a police or fire. They need us there 30 seconds ago. And then
Yes.
dispatch is trying to communicate with them information. And then for me on my end, I'm trying to get officer safety information. Like, have you been in this house before? Is there domestic
Mm.
violence going on? What's the history? Is there weapons in the house? And those kind of questions usually dispatch asks. But depending on the call itself, the caller, is I
Hmm.
can't hear the caller. All I get is what dispatch is telling me.
Got
And you
it.
have to communicate. You have to communicate that with them. And plus, then my sergeant's on the radio. He's listening to it. Command staff could be hearing it. And so it's having that
Wow.
communication so everybody knows what we're going to. Is it just a neighbor dispute, or is it somebody with a gun? I mean, there's different levels of communication to get all that information to me. I get there safely and we get to the situation and handle it as best we can. But like you said, you have to communicate all this information, and it has to be done pretty quickly.
Is
It's
there
not
a
like it. Yeah,
protocol? Is there like a protocol of like you're gonna know who, what, when, where, why, how, like in that order? Or
no,
is it always different?
it's always different. You're not going to know the caller may be calling 911 for their husband or wife just beat him up or just hit him, but we don't know all this information because it's coming in. It's hard to explain unless you actually listen to the call itself.
Okay.
We may know the who and we may know who's involved. We don't know the why. We don't know how they did it. We don't know when they did it because all that stuff has to be figured out or investigated when we get to that scene, depending on what it is. And it could be a small thing like two neighbors disputing over a parking spot, which happens, or a dog barking. There's policies and procedures, and with code enforcement and with animal control about a dog barking. What is the process of that complaint? And so
Yeah.
it's just communicating with everybody involved. And
Right.
the dispatchers, they have they get millions, hundreds of thousands of calls a year in the department I work in, and
Hmm.
so they have to prioritize all these calls and to figure, okay, this is
Yeah.
priority one, this is priority two, that kind of thing.
Uh, I'm thinking in my head that as I'm listening to what you're saying, that the number one priority is the where. It's like, okay, where am I going? Okay, I need you to get to the apartment building, and then on the way, you're gathering more information. Is that correct? Because you're trying to
Yeah,
get there first.
right. Yes. So if it's like, I mean, to just say it's a shooting call and I know where I have to get to that scene first, okay, I'm going to this address. Okay, now as I'm going there, lights and sirens, driving fast to get there. Then I got other stuff going on. Okay, what else is dispatch telling me? I have to put information. Hey, I'm coming on scene. Where's my partner come in? Where are they coming from? Because we get there
It's a lot.
together.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in that short period of time. And
Right.
depending on the caller, I mean, dispatch may have to de-escalate the situation on the phone to try to
Mm-hmm.
calm that person
Mm-hmm.
down so they can get more information, to
Yeah.
get the where am I going, and then once I'm going then I got to start thinking about, it's like a checklist I have in my mind of what, okay,
Yeah.
this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
I get there, secure the scene. But like I said, every call I get is different. They're not all the same. So the different checklists for different
Mm-hmm.
calls, because it might go
And
from
then
a
go ahead.
it might go to, could be a small dispute between a husband and a wife, but we get there and it's completely different, meaning it
Mm-hmm.
escalated to something else that we weren't anticipating because we got the first call and they hung up and we have nothing else. Then we get there and it's totally
Mm.
different. I need more units. It's just everything changes instantly, second by second.
So you got the communication with dispatch, and then now you get on scene, and now you have to communicate with people
The
on scene.
caller. Correct. So if the caller now is I'm talking to the reporting party who called us, then I got to ask them questions that dispatch already asked, but I'm going to ask other questions.
Yep.
What do you need us for? Why are we here? Are you okay? Do you need medical attention? I mean, depending,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's all depending on what the call is. Because I mean, if it's, I always go back to domestic violence because those are a lot of calls we go to. What's the situation? Is the person gone? Is he still on scene? Is he in the house? Does he have weapons? Does he have guns? Does he have knives? Is there kids in the house? Is there dogs in the house? There's just a lot of stuff you have to think
Yes.
about.
Yeah.
And as I'm talking to her, I got to be, somewhat, communicate to her. I got to be polite, but I also have to be in a way where I need to get information. I
Yeah.
have to be not like forceful, but I have to have like a command presence. Okay, ma'am, I need to know what's going on. Give me the information. I know dispatch already talked to you, but now I'm here. We're here to help you. What can you tell me is going on? But this is within like 6 minutes. Call comes in. We're there in between 3 and 5 minutes, and then boom, all the information starts coming. You start telling us information, and it's. I would
Fast.
say it's like
Fast.
information overload. But after
Sure.
the longer you've done the job, it comes natural, just like your job. Everything just comes natural. Okay, check this box, and I'm doing also in my head. Check this box. Call this person. Do this.
Yeah.
Do this. Do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell us about a time when communication really resulted in a good story. There's
Yeah. It
something
was.
good.
Yeah. It started out not so good. But this was back during COVID. I was on patrol, and we had a young man who was in mental crisis, and he had schizophrenia, and so his mom locked him out of his house, and he was just having a bad day, mental crisis. And at this time, this is 2020. We didn't have mental health clinicians on scene yet. That wasn't part of our department. It was just officers, or we call in an ambulance. And so I was the first one on scene, and he was all over the place. He was in huge
Mm,
crisis. And, that was where you had to do your de escalation. This is
yes.
like before all that, CIT stuff we used to do for mental health crisis. This is just me being a police officer talking to a person who has mental crisis. And I'm not saying I've done this before, but I've done it enough times to try to figure, okay, I need to calm
Mm-hmm.
this person down. But on that situation, though, you have to be careful on what words you say because you can't use certain words that may trigger him because
Interesting.
he's schizophrenia. Something triggered him, but you don't want to use those words to
Oh,
keep him
wow. Okay.
triggered. And so, one thing I've learned, like we have mental health clinicians now. We had an incident today that was kind of like something like this. But with this young man, like I said, he was locked out of his house. I had to de-escalate him. I mean, he was in a situation where I had to communicate with parents when the parents finally got on scene because he was at his grandma's house and mom and dad finally showed up. So then we had to work as a team to try to understand, his mental illness, which was he had schizophrenia. He didn't take his medication. And then the whole
Mm-hmm.
during COVID, everything's locked down. He lost his job, lost his girlfriend. It just a
Mm-hmm.
lot, everything just came all at once with
Yeah.
him. But the end result was I was able to calm him down, not use the words calm, don't use the words relax, because those words upset people. Just relax. Can't use those words. I was able
Right.
to calm him
I mean,
down. For you
right.
and I, hey, just relax. But
Oh,
for
yeah, it
people that
really
are in
works. It
crisis,
really
it
works. You
works.
should ask my
Yeah,
husband.
yeah. It doesn't work with my kids either. Just relax. Um, but yeah, but you want to make it work as a team because you don't want him to get violent. And as the older I get in
Exactly.
this job and profession, it's almost like I don't want to get in the use of force with this person because he's
Mm-hmm.
not going with the program. He needs to relax, he needs to calm down. I got to communicate this with him without using those typical words. And I want to be able to, for my safety and everybody else, as I say to people, I want to talk them in handcuffs because use of force
Mm.
never looks good. And when someone's in mental crisis and they don't like the police, they don't like our uniforms, they don't like everything
Yeah.
around them. So
Right.
you got to be able to communicate with them, put them in handcuffs if you have to, or restrain them if you have to, if that's a need. In this situation, I didn't have to do that. He didn't get violent. He finally calmed himself down. He sat down. We started talking to each other. The ambulance finally came. He was more upset with grandma and dad. Dad and him were not. When dad showed up, I could
Mm-hmm.
see him getting more agitated. And one thing I learned about this job, this was my call. And so I could even tell my sergeant, you need to back away because I'm in a situation where I'm communicating with this individual. And if anybody else comes in and interrupts it, it could
Yep.
mess our link together. And so he was just on me, eyes on me. I got him calmed down. He sat down. We actually got him on the gurney. He went to the hospital. He got, we call it 5150, but he got help, and he's back in school now. So, in the end, it turned out good because he was able to get back his medication. He went back. He was going to Cal State East Bay as a student,
Yeah.
and so the end result was good. But the whole time was talking to his parents, being a team, so it didn't turn into a violent act because, like I
Yeah.
said, use of force, and sometimes with mental health, it's just that usually what happens in the end because we're there for a reason. The family or whatever I'll call this wants this individual taken care of in a way, but we can't just like take people away. We can't do that. It's not like I can't just arrest you and take you to jail.
No,
There's
no.
protocols.
Well, it sounds like you're trying to build a rapport. You're trying to
Hmm.
listen. You're trying
Yeah,
to relate, so that we're human. We're trying
yeah,
to connect.
yes.
That's the word.
And
We're
once you have
trying to
that
connect.
connection, and you have that connection with him, and then it's almost like it's a light bulb comes on, and now him and I are just connecting, and he just
Yeah.
talks to me, and then we get a rapport, and after that, it was fine. Yeah,
That's a really good. One other
yeah.
thing that I thought of when you were talking is you were saying like people don't like the uniform. People get,
Hmm.
upset by all these things. Is there a time where you're thinking you're not in pursuit, you're not actively working on going somewhere, that you're trying to communicate with people in your community in a positive manner, in a calm situation? You're just like on the streets, just kind of relating so that it's
Hmm.
not always combative every time somebody sees a police
Oh yeah, I
officer.
mean all the time. I mean, especially when you work in the traffic division, people come up to us all the time in the motor because they love motorcycles. We're in full uniform, right? And so at that point, it's just like two people talking. I think the whole uniform thing for them is totally different because I think what I've noticed more too
Mm,
working in traffic is they know that's my job, so they don't see
mm,
me as that cop that comes to your house takes me to jail. They just see me as the
mm.
person who gives you a ticket.
Interesting.
And the uniform thing, though, with our as we went forward now in 2024, we have mental health clinicians that ride with police officers, and the police officers wear a different uniform than I do. So it's a little bit different. It's like a polo shirt. It's not the full on uniform that you've seen me wear before. It's just like, khaki pants, a polo shirt. They have a bulletproof vest on, but it's not as intimidating as the uniform you might see a police officer wear.
These are the mental health professionals.
Yeah, so the professionals ride with the officers, and the officers' uniforms are different from what I wear because, like you said, sometimes people see uniform and
Yeah,
they shut down. They don't want to talk to you, and
yeah.
so we decided to kind of change the uniform for the officers who are with the mental health clinicians. That way, it looks more appealing to people that need help and that are in mental crisis. It's not the normal, typical Navy blue uniform, the badge, the gun. That's yeah,
Yeah, no, no, it matters. It matters. I mean,
yeah, it does.
even the professionals that I work with in corporate America, it's like you have to say what you wear, what you're wearing, communicate something.
Yes.
You are communicating something based
Mm-hmm.
on what you are wearing. I mean, we got to get down to the details on these things. So, very, very cool. Where do you see some of the mistakes that are made? Even like maybe like some of yourself that you've done over the years that you've kind of switched, or you know, where do you see some challenges?
um, Not communicating clearly,
Mm,
and assuming everything can be resolved. It can't.
okay.
I mean, compared to, let's say, 15 years ago compared to now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I've had more training in talking to people and mental health clinicians, stuff like that. We've gone to trainings that's California Post certified that I have to take to deal
Mm-hmm.
with people that are in crisis. But I think the thing is just not communicating clearly. You're just that typical, as I call it, young police officers, brand new, and just wants to take people to jail and wants to fight people. They don't want to communicate. And that's where I said before, talking somebody into handcuffs. I'm not getting any younger. I'm in decent shape for being how old I am, but it's a young man's game. But if I can talk somebody who's 6'8" into handcuffs and not have to get any use of force with him, that's a great day, right? But there's other people that think, oh, well, you just put him in handcuffs, you talk to him, you didn't want to get in a fight with him. It's like, well, no, because, I don't want to get hurt. But at the same time, if I have to do and get any use of force, I have to do what I have to do. That's just part of the
Sure.
job, right? But Yeah,
Yeah.
talking someone in handcuffs. That is like huge. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm pretty good at that for the most part because I've been doing this job a long time. And the longer you do this profession, you will learn how to communicate with people. And I would say even mistakes that I made in the past, it's just not communicating. It's just right to handcuffs, take someone to jail, get use of force because you don't want to deal
Yeah.
with whatever they're going through because A, you don't know what they're going through. You don't want to talk to them about it, or you just don't care. And now
Yeah.
going forward, it's like, well, no, now it's like, hey, you called me. What's going on? What can I do for you? I'm here to help you. What can I do?
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just take a minute to say how much respect you deserve, and that it's warranted. That what you do is um, critical for our communities and for the safety of all of us. And I appreciate everything that you do. So
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you.
All right, let's switch it up. Let's just get off the topic of law enforcement. What's on your
Okay.
bucket list?
Well, travel for one.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you probably know we're going to Ireland in about a month. But I want to go to Australia. Australia is my bucket list.
Okay.
I did a thing in college or high school about Australia. I've always wanted to go to Australia. That's the thing. I want to go to Sydney, go to summertime, and
Yes.
just go to
Okay.
Australia. That's my go-to. That's where I want to go. Of course, there's
That
other
looks
stuff we're gonna go to
beautiful.
first. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
That looks like an amazing spot. I know
Yeah.
it's on a lot of people's bucket lists. How long did it take to get there? Like, I don't
It'll
even know. Like,
probably a friend of ours just went 16-hour flight, I think. That's a
yeah,
long flight.
something.
I
That's a
mean, I did
long
10
flight.
hours. 10 hours to Italy is long, but 16, that's another, I don't know. That's far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you taking the time and to out of your day to talk to
You're
me
welcome.
and hearing your stories and hearing about communication. And it really just, is enlightening to hear how communication has played really a huge role in what you do because you're trying
Hmm.
to de-escalate, you're trying
Hmm.
to connect, you're trying to converse,
Hmm.
and then you have to relay everything. I'm assuming we didn't really get into this, but back after it's all done, you have to then communicate whether it's in written form or verbal form
Hmm.
what happened because it just doesn't end when the situation's over. So
And we have to think quick on our feet. I mean, being in this
yeah,
position, we have to. It's a quick. It's it's quick. There is no way about it. I have to make a
sure,
decision in split seconds. And also, being a field training officer, I train new guys to be police officers. So that's obviously I got to communicate that to them when I'm
yes,
training them to pass all they have to pass to be on their own. So
yep,
communicating with them is sometimes can be difficult too because it's a generational thing. Yeah,
yeah.
but
Well,
you got to be quick on your feet.
what you've gained in the knowledge of the years on the in the streets on the force, you're to pass that down to the next generation is critical. So
Hmm.
again, appreciate you. Thank you so much. Pass on our gratitudes to everyone that that's in this field.
Oh well.
And then so what's going to happen now is I'm going to meet with my colleagues, and we're going to kind of talk about what you talked about and pull out some highlights and some key moments.
Okay.
And we're you're teaching all of us.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Todd.
You're welcome. Bye.
Guys, Officer Todd, what were some of your takeaways?
I wish he was the officer that I encountered when I got pulled over on the highway speeding down. I loved everything he had to say about communication. I felt like he really understands what it takes. Part of it is his experience being in the force for so long, but also working with people and learning more and more and more that you have
Mm-hmm.
to be very careful with how you communicate with people, but you can also use it as a powerful tool in law enforcement.
Mhm. Uh, I agree with you, Adrienne. Todd was really aware of not only his communication, the words he was using and or making a strong effort not to use, but also what was happening with the person he was speaking to and the words they were using and avoiding any trigger words that would escalate the situation, and instead choosing words that would help de-escalate the situation and build trust and a rapport with the potential person to have a more positive outcome. So his awareness of communication and the impact it has was very impressive.
I think what I really appreciated about his discussion with you, Jen, was that he really knows why we're doing it. Like Adrienne and Anne Marie were saying, he understands the value of communication, and that showed through his conversation with you in many ways. He said, at first, I'm a traffic enforcement officer, and the reason for it is to prevent collisions, right? So he made sure that anybody listening to this knows why we're sitting out there. It's not just to, give you a ticket. And he made it a point to say that, usually people say, okay, you communicate with them and they say, okay, we won't do it again, officer, and then you move on and have a nice day. And then he very eloquently put, and then there's other people that communicate to me in different ways, right? So even in communicating that to us, he was very eloquent in saying that. Something I thought that was very interesting and that we don't necessarily think about so much is that every piece of communication or exchange of information that happens between dispatch and whoever the victim is or whoever's calling in, it's all happening very quickly, right? And so if there is not that clear communication, or if things have evolved, he says you could be walking into something completely different than what you were told or informed of, or whatever you're picturing in your mind. So I think that the speed piece of how things are communicated is super critical to their job and for them to be able to do it well. And I think that I associated with our conversations that we had with healthcare professionals when they're in the OR, and if they're not communicating clearly, Todd was saying, it's really important for everyone to communicate clearly, then it is a matter of life at this point. It's a super critical piece that needs to be clearly communicated so that they can be prepared for whatever.
That came across to me too, how he said he's driving the vehicle, the lights are on, the navigating that, but then also you're having to process all of the verbal information that the dispatch is giving to you. And you have to kind of hold all of that information before you get to the scene, and you're kind of analyzing it before you even get there of like, okay, what do I think is going to happen, but not trying to calm everything down. It's just a really high pressure profession that requires excellent verbal skills and excellent listening skills.
Absolutely. On the listening piece, when he talked about it's great that the dispatchers are there and they're skilled and they're obviously having to de-escalate and keep the person calm on the phone, but also he's the third party getting the information. It's like the game of telephone. Like, did I get it the way that it was relayed to that other person? So those nuances are very important. You have to be an active listener, but also being able to understand and decipher what has been relayed to someone else and not to you directly.
Adrienne, it's interesting you said the game of telephone, because that's exactly what came to mind for myself as well. I think it's a reminder for all of us when we're communicating to be clear and concise, to the point. Like, what is the most important intent of the message? And making that more of a habit and eliminating all the extraneous information that could become a distraction. Something to utilize certainly in law enforcement, but in all the professions. So much oftentimes gets lost because too much information that's not necessary gets put into the message. And if the other person is not an efficient listener, it gets lost.
Yeah. One of my other guests that I was trying to lock down for this date was a dispatcher. So I'm really hoping that, and the dispatcher said, can I come at a different time? So I'm hoping that we can do this law enforcement series again, because that would be so interesting to get the perspective of the dispatcher in regards to the communication and what that role, how critical that role is in the whole process.
Something that really struck me, which Todd had mentioned and talked about, was essentially the fact that he clearly understands that there is something that is causing whatever altercation that is going on or whatever is happening. And so the fact that, you know, their department has now has mental health crisis specialists with them, and the fact that they even have them dress a different way, because we know that communicates different things. But really, the fact, what struck me was when he said, you know, I want to communicate with them so that I don't have to use handcuffs. I don't have to get into any sort of physical altercation, because a lot of times when you are communicating, when you are getting to the crux of the issue, then you can more effectively solve a problem. So that really stood out to me as well.
Absolutely. Well, that concludes our Connect to Engage video chat series for this month. We hope that everyone enjoyed the immersive exploration of communication in the field of law enforcement. So we want to express, again, our deepest appreciation to Todd. We want to thank him for taking his time out of his busy life to share his communication experiences and his stories, which I really thought were very valuable. Thank you to everyone for joining us on this extraordinary journey and being part of our community. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode of the Connect to Engage video chat. Share the series with others, and we appreciate everyone's tuning in, and we will see everybody next time.
Bye.
Bye.